Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm up here at Nelson Bay, and more specifically, I'm down here on Zenith Beach, a beautiful, beautiful beach up here on the mid-north coast. And I'm just by the surf, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to try and make the most of Easter Sunday. I've got a fellow out there surfing at the moment. We've got the sun rising, and it's just a glorious, glorious autumn day here in Australia. What I'd like to do today is go through a book summary entitled Guns, Germs and Steel by an author named Jared Diamond. I'll just move up here amongst the rocks to get away from that buffeting breeze, and we can still enjoy the view without being interfered with by the sounds of the wind. Anyway, this book here by Jared Diamond talks about the history of mankind and how humans have been able to develop over time based on environmental advantages that certain societies would have, which would become communal sort of wisdom that was passed down through the ages, as well as the fact that the certain foods and the certain practices that people enjoyed also was able to improve the genetic and the physical makeup of these populations. So, being in the right place at the right time not only provided you with opportunities to learn skills from others, to cross-fertilize and to adapt, to cooperate, collaborate, complement and supplement your knowledge. What the author here is also suggesting is that our genetic makeup is also influenced and passed down to future generations based on what we've experienced, what we've learnt, because it does get captured and altered in our genetic makeup. So it's a very interesting topic. I love these sorts of topics. Being Greek or having a Greek background, I know that one of the advantages that the Greeks had was that Greece was geographically blessed with being at the crossroads of East and West. We're at the crossroads of the many trade routes which had people of different cultures, of different nationalities pass through Greece, stay in Greece, live in Greece, move through Greece, and then Greece, through its colonialisation program, set up colonies throughout the known world and was able to adapt, adopt and integrate the great lessons, the great colours, the great shades, the great spectrum that it was exposed to into its own culture. Because what we know in terms of learning is that learning is simply the art of attaching the known to the unknown. And culturally, the same can be said. A culture develops, a culture broadens, deepens, and becomes much better when it is exposed to other cultures when it's constantly exposed to threats, when it's constantly pushing itself to improve, to progress. And Greece, as an example, is one of those countries that has always been at the centre of other people's plans. Now, there was never a day in the history of ancient Greece where others didn't want to conquer Greece and to be a key influencer, a king or a queen of the Greeks, because A, of its location, and B, of the many advantages that it was able to achieve by, as I said before, absorbing and connecting to the other cultures throughout the history of its development. So the author goes on to indicate here, quite correctly in my opinion, that history followed different courses for different peoples because of differences amongst people's environments, not necessarily because of biological differences amongst peoples themselves. So what we're saying is that all people are basically pretty similar. We all have the same opportunities to grow and develop, but that opportunity to grow and develop is enhanced depending on the environment that you're in. Once again, harping back to Greece. Greece has an absolutely wonderful climate. Its winters aren't too harsh and its summers are sublime. Summer in Greece can be likened to what we're seeing today in terms of the weather. Every single day in the 92 days of summer that Greece celebrates are just like this. Blue sky without a cloud anywhere to be seen, and light drenching everyone who is fortunate enough to be living in that particular environment. So as I mentioned before, Greece has many advantages that other countries may not have had. The light in Greece goes longer than most other countries. The climate is more stable in summer. There are less days which are cloud-filled, there is less rain, there are less challenges from a physical, environmental perspective. And hence, those advantages which, whilst they seem quite simple, do give a basis and a foundation for a lifestyle that facilitates progress, growth, development, and helps become a crucible, helps become the starting point for further growth and development that can be passed on and taught to other peoples in other lands. And the question that the author here asks is, why do some societies thrive whilst others fail? Why are some people more successful than others? And we take a look at human evolution. So the author takes a position and talks about Mesopotamia as an example, and says that Mesopotamia was the first region in the world where people started to settle down and to practice agriculture, knowing very well that in terms of human development, humans, people, societies, initially were hunter-gatherer, were nomads, would move from place to place in search of food, in search of safety, in search of all of those things that would make life, I guess, easier, but more importantly safer, so that they could live longer, have children, and not have to live the threat on a daily basis of being attacked and killed. So Mesopotamia was a starting point for the world's, I guess, new phase is the best way of putting it, where they practiced agriculture, which meant that people had the luxury of spending less time moving around and more time doing things together in groups, in larger groups than what they would have been able to do before, and to be able to protect their loved ones and to develop community-based living. So it's all started with food. You know, how do we source food? How do we produce food? How do we gain access to food without having to be on the constant walkabout and constantly moving from place to place, and not having the opportunity just to stay in one place? So it started in Mesopotamia, then it was followed, according to this author, by China, and then Mesoamerica. So the three key regions in the world which facilitated a different style of society were Mesopotamia, a place between rivers, Asia, and Mesoamerica. We all know, and science has been able to confirm it as well, that the first humans emerged from Africa, and they left Africa for various reasons, but the main reason, according to this author here, the main reason for this research is that they left in search for food and a better life, similar to what the first migrants did. The migrants who left Greece, for example, my parents, my grandparents, uncles, aunts, and many others left their homeland, left their families, left their culture, left all of the comforts of a particular place where they were born, to go to search for food and better life, not only for them, but for their children. And the author says that science has been able to put a marker in terms of timeline, that about 11,000 years ago, agriculture, cooking foods, growing seeds, using animals for food and labour first commenced. And what we've also been able to understand is that by living an agricultural lifestyle meant that people had access to consistent and better food, which helped enable better life, better health, which led to stronger immunity, which was passed down to children and further generations in terms of fortified genes and improved genes, which led to progress and evolution of humans, society, and learnings and wisdom. Because what happened, according to this author, is that agriculture gave way to culture. Agriculture basically was the foundation of improved culture. Because when you start to live in the same place, in the same community, with the same people, with more people, then there is more of a need for language to form and for communities to collaborate and work together and to separate tasks, which helped humans develop certain physical aspects. It helped them develop a more active body and mind. It helped and facilitated cognitive development, according to this author, which, as we mentioned before, helped fortify, help build, help develop the genetic makeup, which was passed down to future generations. So, with communities came discussion, came extra time. You didn't have to pack up your community and move to another location. You didn't have to live in fear all the time. You had more time to just chill out, to talk, more than just about crops. You got to talk about and discover philosophy, for example. And what happened was, as communities became more interested and more capable of then taking the excesses of their personal exertion and using that to trade, what happens is that there is a cross-fertilization, there is a diffusion of wisdom, of knowledge, and as it has, information has always been diffused from the east to the west, or so it was in ancient times. And the author says something here which is quite powerful. He says that agricultural societies were always more advanced than hunter-gatherer societies. They facilitated more complex development through the storing of food, through the ability for people to have more free time, for people to be able to explore and develop and to expand their knowledge and to add to the pool of information that they had available to them, which led to writing systems, which led to oral traditions, which led to architecture, which turned and led to religious practices. So what we're saying here is that agricultural societies were the foundation of human advancement, and that an agricultural society was always going to show more promise and more progress than a hunter-gatherer society, especially the agricultural societies, the agricultural communities that worked with others, that collaborated, that traded, that shared information, shared knowledge, and shared their advancements. And as I mentioned before, the advantage that the Greeks had was that they were in the middle of the trade routes between east and west. They were a seafaring nation, and they were a nation that were distributed. There were 1,500 city-states that made up ancient Greece. And those city-states would have their own armies, their own communities, their own geographies. And they would compete against each other. But through competition brought advancement. having been a martial artist in my younger days, I learnt that through competition you do learn more, because competition brings out the best in both opponents. You lift your game when you're competing against somebody else. You are able to learn when you benchmark yourself to other people. You're able to create a baseline when you see what other groups are capable of doing, and that can help you lift your standard, but not only lift your standard but also help them lift their standard to become better as you become better, so that they can stay ahead of the curve, so to speak. So it's important to understand that collaboration, cooperation and competition, the 3 C's, are important for a society in order to not only survive but also to thrive, to grow, develop and to progress. And that an agricultural society was always going to promise and deliver more than what a hunter-gatherer society was going to be able to achieve. But since those days, we've been able to continue to progress, and from an agricultural society where people were grouped into townships and small communities, then we had the Industrial Revolution that was led by the mighty English. The Industrial Revolution that enabled societies to group into urban communities, where instead of having townships, we started to have cities and regional centres of excellence, where a lot more people would be living even closer together than what they would have ever been living when they were living in the past. So all of these things help with education. And since then, of course, we've progressed even further. We've gone from the Industrial Revolution to the information age, and then on to the digital age, where people are able to not only interface and connect with people in the same city, the same town, the same family, but you're able now through the internet to connect with people throughout the world in real time and for absolutely no cost, virtually free. So anybody in the world who has access to the internet is able to communicate with other people in the world and to live and to learn and to pass on the wisdom of their generations. The other great thing that we've also been able to experience, especially here in Australia, is the gift of multiculturalism. Just like how Greece was in the old days, where it was the crossroads to many cultures throughout the world, similarly these days, Australia, as an example, is a country that basically has multiculturalism worked out and has contributed to the fabric of this wonderful nation, where we bring people from different cultures, we bring architecture, we bring foods, we bring languages, we bring ideas, we bring values, and they all go into the melting pot called Australia. And we've been able to produce and create one of the greatest countries in the world. If you look around the world at the moment, I guess there is no better country to live in than Australia. It's a country that is wealthy in terms of its resources. We are far enough, yet close enough with technology to be in reach of everybody else. And we've been able to learn and leverage from the various skills and abilities and capabilities that have come our way. So once again, a beautiful lesson, a wonderful book, which basically gets us to think about our lives a little bit better. And it's important to understand that in order to grow and develop, you can't spend too much time in isolation. You need to cross-fertilise. You need to cross-fertilise your ideas. You need to learn from others. And as we mentioned before, the art of learning is attaching the unknown to the known. And if you're in an isolated society, such as the Australian Indigenous people, even if you've been around for 60,000 years, it doesn't mean that those 60,000 years are going to lead to development, growth and advancement, especially if those years are not leveraged in a way to grow and develop. From what I understand, in terms of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, people were dispersed throughout this country, and very rarely did they cross from one territory, from one country into another. I've got an Indigenous friend of mine who says that within Indigenous culture, a man does not leave his country, stays in his country. Only women are allowed to move into another country, to marry into another country, whereas a man needs to stay in his country. And men don't cross over into other people's country, which suggests that there is not very much collaboration and cooperation amongst communities. That is passed on from the males. Things may be passed on from the females, but as I understand as well, the Aboriginal and Indigenous societies are also very much partitioned into men's business and women's business, which makes it much harder to have that ongoing passing on of knowledge. And as we said, for most of those 60,000 years, the Indigenous Australians were hunter-gatherers and were not able to interface not only with other people from other countries, from other cultures, but amongst themselves as well. So this isolation in many ways has caused some challenges in terms of their growth and development. And it wasn't until 250 years ago or so, when the English were able to come to Australia, that we're able to then provide the Indigenous of Australia with another view, with another aspect, another worldview. Some say it was an invasion, other people suggest it was something else. But at the end of the day, you can't stop progress. You can't stop people moving around the world, because at the end of the day, wherever we look, whatever we see, we are in the presence of God's land. Always has been, always will be. And it's here for all of our enjoyment, not just the enjoyment of a few, but everyone. And as I always say, regardless of where you live in the world, or regardless of where you are in Australia, this continent has never been walked by somebody who hasn't either been born here or came from somewhere else. Nobody came out of the ground in this country, in this continent. We've all come from somewhere else, and we all need to celebrate the beauty of this country and to live as one and to be respectful, because it always has been and it always will be God's land. So once again, thank you very much for taking the opportunity to listen to this vlog today. The book, as I said, was entitled Guns, Germs and Steel by Jared Diamond, and it's given us an opportunity to understand how humans have evolved and how that evolution has been able to impact each and every one of us, and really is a gift, something that needs to be considered to be a gift, to be celebrated, rather than something to be fought over and to be breaking each other's hearts over. Take care, everybody. Wishing you all the best, and take care on this Easter Sunday for the Roman Catholic and Protestants. Yassas, and bye for now.